Prime Minister Narendra Modi meeting his Pakistani counterpart Nawaz Sharif as part of a series of bilateral meetings with SAARC leaders who were attending his swearing-in ceremony yesterday. Well, Narendra Modi's 50-minute meeting with the Pakistani Prime Minister included discussions, we believe, on terrorism and talks on most favoured nation status. Those talks, of course, taking place after a long spell of frosty ties post the 2008 Mumbai terror attacks, as well as tension along the border and increased instances of ceasefire violations as well. Officials, of course, have been underplaying the meeting somewhat, calling the meetings with SAARC leaders courtesy calls and saying no major announcements are expected. Nidhi Razan joining us on the phone line at this point for more. Nidhi, any more details emerging of what was talked about at that meeting?
Well, Ankita, the meeting seems to have lasted much longer than expected, just under an hour, and clearly, as you were saying, certainly far beyond a courtesy meeting between the two leaders, and in fact between Mr Modi and other leaders as well. But this particular meeting was being watched very closely, and we're told by sources in the government that Prime Minister Modi really raised the issue of terrorism emanating from Pakistan, from groups that continue to use Pakistani soil and Pakistani territory to attack India. He raised that issue very strongly, we are told, and particularly the issue of the 26/11 trial, which he told Nawaz Sharif was going very, very slowly and needed to be speeded up. We're yet to hear on what Mr Sharif told him in return, but these were the key issues that were really flagged by Mr Modi in the meeting: the concern over terrorism that continues to emanate from Pakistan, as well as the speed or the lack of speed of the 26/11 trial. We're also trying to find out whether Mr Modi did in fact specifically raise the attack on the Indian consulate in Afghanistan, which happened just a couple of days ago, and which President Hamid Karzai has on record blamed on the Lashkar-e-Taiba. That would be an important point. My understanding is that much of the meeting, in fact, did focus on the issue of terrorism. So the sense one gets from the government here at the moment, from the new government, is that it was some pretty plain speaking on the issue of terrorism in the very first meeting itself, as well as, of course, trying to break the ice and essentially get to know each other. But more details, Ankita, are awaited on the contours of what else the leaders talked about in terms of how the dialogue will proceed from here and how the countries will proceed with the peace process from here. Ankita?
All right, Nidhi, there was some indication that we might hear from the Pakistan side, some indications that there may be some sort of a not terribly formal press conference, but that the leaders might talk. But at this point, any more indications that you're getting about, just the fact that this was supposed to be a 35-minute meeting, it did extend well beyond that to 50 minutes. Is that being seen as significant?
Well, yes, it would be significant. Even a meeting that lasts about 35 minutes is certainly not just a courtesy meeting, because we heard the BJP essentially downplaying the importance of these one-on-one interactions, saying that they would essentially be getting to know each other, courtesy calls, and I'm sure that there was that as well. But the fact is that there was obviously some serious talking that went on, and when it's a 50-minute meeting, it's way beyond the regular courtesy. So, like I said, what in the initial information really that's come out of this meeting is that the new Prime Minister did stress on the issues that concern India, particularly on terrorism and on the 26/11 trial, which has now really dragged on for so long with absolutely no headway. Mr Hafiz Saeed, the LET chief, the JUD chief, he continues to roam freely in Pakistan. He has a free hand to address rallies. He had been against Nawaz Sharif's visit to India. Mr Sharif, of course, is also having to do a delicate balancing act here. He's fighting his own battles with the military and hardliners in the intelligence establishment back home in Pakistan. And it was really a leap of faith for him as well to defy them and to come to India to meet Mr Modi and kind of jumpstart a peace process between the two countries. So Mr Sharif himself has been very keen to try and fight those hardline forces within Pakistan and rework a peace process with India. He's clearly trying to do that, and we will hopefully hear from him personally or from his senior officials in the next few minutes on how the Pakistani side views this meeting.
Right. Nidhi, as we wait for that, of course, do we also know whether trade, the issue of most favoured nation status came up at all, or was this really primarily about terrorism, about the 26/11 trial?
I am told that all issues would have been put on the table. In a sense, trade is a very important part of the discussions between the two countries. So again, we're waiting to get confirmation from our sources, but we believe that it is something that would certainly have come up. Indications are that terror certainly formed a large part of the discussion, but the issue of trade, most favored nation status, trade barriers, so on, would have also formed an important component of whatever they discussed today.
Nidhi, we're seeing these live visuals now of Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif's convoy at Atal Bihari Vajpayee's residence. And let's just reflect upon these pictures, the fact that he's making this call on Mr. Vajpayee, the fact that Nawaz Sharif has repeatedly referenced his ties with Atal Bihari Vajpayee, talking about wanting to pick up the threads that were left off in 1999. In a sense, the idea of Atal Bihari Vajpayee and his foreign policy is still very prominent in the Pakistan Prime Minister's scheme of things?
Well, Atal Bihari Vajpayee, of course, was a key player back then, having been the BJP Prime Minister, the NDA Prime Minister, who took a huge leap of faith and took that bus to Lahore and made that big grand gesture and essentially tried to revive an important peace process at that time with Pakistan, and then that was interrupted by the Kargil war. So I think that's what Mr. Sharif is referring to, that here were these two leaders that did try at that time to attempt something new in India-Pakistan relations, and then you had Musharraf and the Kargil war that subsequently just months later interrupted that process, and then you had that sort of takeoff in fits and starts in the following years. So Mr. Vajpayee is a very, very important and key player in that, and Mr. Sharif has made a very good gesture, in fact, by going to visit him this afternoon.